Sometimes as humans, we wear glasses which others can see, which are sometimes rose tinted, and you look at it differently than the way as they go through life, you also have failure or what you perceive as failure. And then you learn from it and get a little more balanced and learn to enjoy the moment when you succeed. Enjoying success for that moment and truly letting your day hair down and enjoying that close of a good quarter and then focusing about what you need to do in the future is not on that day. On the day you really get the results, you enjoy the positives of it, and then bounce back the next day to start thinking about the future. Destiny you can drive through hard work and effort, but accepting the outcomes is a mix of a lot of other variables too. You can have the most difficult conversations as long as you have trust. Serve with empathy. Definitely bring the service mindset or servant leadership mindset. Whatever you achieve, at the end of the day, acknowledge your vulnerability.
Okay, so today we have with us Anant Radhakrishnan. Radha is Executive Vice President, CEO, and MD of Infosys BPM Limited, a $1 billion turnover ITS BPM company. Infosys BPM is majority owned subsidiary of Infosys, and his company serves 225 clients across the globe, and he has a team of more than 42,000 associates. And prior to this, he has worked in Hindustan Unilever, Eicher Gudath, and Sundaram Clayton. And Radha is a postgraduate from Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and an honors graduate in mechanical engineering from the NIT Trichy. And he has also completed a global leadership program in innovation and entrepreneurship at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. I have the privilege of having interviewed Radha for my book, High Conflict by Conflict, and also for some of the panel discussions that I conducted. And he's given some very insightful perspective based on his life experiences. And this session is totally focused on him instead of a panel. So thank you, Radha, for joining us.
Wonderful, Rohan. Great to meet you virtually again.
And so Radha, as I shared, this show is focused on learning through stories, real life stories, and kisse kahaniyan. So beyond all the success and qualifications, what can you tell us a bit about some stories of your personal life beyond these, right from some journey, personal life journey from childhood?
Sure, Rohan. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of my personal and professional experiences over the last 5 decades or so. Rohan, traditional family, conservative, middle class, humble beginnings. Born in the late 60s and then grew up, born in Chennai, brought up in Bangalore. My dad was a government officer, very hardworking, honest. Some of those very simple values of being honest, being hardworking, focusing on good health, higher education. These were things which are solid middle class values which were ingrained to me. I have an elder sister, I'm in the middle. I have a younger brother who unfortunately passed away in a road accident.
Okay.
Talk a little bit as we go along through that, because that was one of the crucial incidents which shaped the way I started thinking in life. And, it's been a good journey. Traditionally Bangalorean, little laid back, but very focused on educating myself. I'm an engineer from NIT Trichy, and then I educated at IIM Lucknow. I spent 30 years now. This is my 31st year of work experience across quite a few industries. Hindustan Unilever, Eicher Motors, and of course Infosys, across consulting, tech services, platforms, and now business process management for the last 13 years. So it's been a good journey. And it's like from moving from a humble beginning to where I am today.
What would you consider as one of the key milestone or a proud moment as a leader for you?
Well, quite a few moments along the way of a good journey. But yeah, I think 5 years ago, when the organization's board decided to bet on me as the leader to lead this organization into the future for BPM, that was indeed a happy moment for me.
So I would like you to describe the soil and roots beyond the tree and fruits. So who's the, we always see the tree and the fruits outside, but I want you to describe the soil and roots in your life.
Well, let me talk a little bit about the roots because when it comes to the roots, I'll start with my grandparents. Some of it has left a strong imprint on me and my style. I had my maternal grandfather who retired as a headmaster in a high school, very focused on learning, on helping young people to develop. He obviously he was an orphan when born. He used to go through this journey where he works in a home and gets shelter and food in exchange. And he educated himself to focus on doing a dual degree and MA, MED, a master's in arts, and then an MEd in education, master's in education.
Okay.
And then he was a teacher, he was a maths teacher, and then he grew up to become the headmaster. And all his children, who were my uncle, my mother's brothers, all of them are double graduates, people who have grown up with focus on education. So learning and learnability, the need, inquisitiveness to learn is something which I definitely imbibed from that culture, from my cousins, from my uncles. My mother, of course, has played a very key role in the way I am shaped up as a leader. I'll come to that. On the paternal grandfather side, they were traditionally priests, Hindu Brahmin priests. They were Jata Vallavas. Okay. And my paternal grandfather broke the tradition of not continuing to be a priest. He became an engineer.
Oh,
it was quite something. Early days, his mom shaped that thinking in him because she somehow felt that this was not a livelihood she wanted her son to pursue. She had seen her husband being a priest, and for whatever reason, she felt she wanted to educate her son to be an engineer. So he was an engineer, and then he went into railways. So this backdrop of engineering, education, learnability, these are things which came from both the grandparental homes, and the focus and the emphasis they gave on that. When it came to my mom, the key thing about interacting with people, demonstrating empathy, and storytelling. My mom used to be her ability to relate stories of real life and help you take a lesson from it was something simply amazing. I remember growing up listening to a lot of her stories. I remember one very impactful incident. I want to share that with you. This was when I was in the US a few years ago in the 2003 to 2007 timeframe. Good 12, 13 years ago. I used to be in the US. I used to be a client partner for the retail and consumer packaged goods practice, working with UB Praveen, who's the chief operations officer now at Infosys. My mom and my dad used to stay alone here in Bangalore. And I used to worry a lot for them because my mom was extremely social, extremely empathetic, very compassionate. She used to morning get up early like a traditional, homemaker. And especially the December, January months, she used to go to the temple very early. Those months are auspicious months in the Hindu calendar. And mom used to then invite the people who are working and cleaning, the BBMP workers around the home where she stayed. she used to call them up for a cup of coffee. This was at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And fairly quiet time, not too much of movement. I used to sit in the US and worry about her safety because I felt if someone had seen this pattern of behavior, they could then come home, rob her of her jewelry or whatever, because being a good South Indian lady, her Mangal Sutra and all that used to be pretty prominent. So I was always concerned about it, and I used to talk about it to her, saying that you have this pattern, but the world is becoming a very difficult place, and you need to protect yourself. Why let strangers into the house? One thought which she gave me then, and she said, "Look, she calls me Radhu. Radha Krishnan is Radhu for her. So look, Radhu, you are far away. These are like my children. And the glasses I wear and see them are with the maternal instinct of them working early morning, going through very difficult weather and keeping the locality clean. So the least we can do is to call them over and give them a cup of coffee. And they will see me as their mother, and they will not see me as somebody whom they can rob from." And she actually told me the glasses you wear and see people with are the glasses in which those people will reflect back that emotion to you. And this for me is empathy at its best. If you are able to wear the shoes of the person whom you are interacting with, and then in turn, that person would reciprocate and give back the energy and feeling the same way. And there's an important lesson. I've benefited immensely from it, because sometimes as humans, we wear glasses which others can see, which are sometimes rose tinted, and you look at it differently than the way, and they in turn reflect what you expect back from them, right? So it's a very, it's a cycle. And you can make this a victorious one as long as you demonstrate that empathy and compassion. So ability to work with people, be social with them, be compassionate, be having a high level of empathy is something I learned from my mom. And I cherish that.
So if you go back to your childhood, any stories from there, any childhood challenge you faced?
Well, Rohan, sometimes I used to be a fairly successful or seen as successful child academically, as an all-rounder. And it's a good journey. My schooling was here in Bangalore, in Kendriya Vidyalaya and Malleshwaram. I have a bunch of friends. We are 12 of us who grew from 1st to 10th together. We're still in touch. But from the childhood, one thing which I grappled with, honestly, was how to accept praise and adulation. Sometimes when you do well and everybody is praising you for what you did, which is natural, because in India you have this great thing of mere bete ne ye kiya, ya my son has achieved this, proud parents saying it, or your colleagues giving you some praise for what you did. I always used to find a little uncomfortable accepting praise. I still struggle, but I've improved with a lot of failures along the way as well now to balance it out. But early childhood, I remember I used to be very shy. Somewhere I felt I didn't deserve that praise, the level of praise which was given. So, now of course there is some great psychology around it called you felt like an imposter syndrome, because having a lot of early success makes people feel that it's not about you, you're lucky. Of course, I do realize that hard work and context is good, but luck plays a big role in success. But having said that, wishing everything away to luck is also not giving you the confidence that you did something in there which was useful for you to take forward in life. So I think those were some of my early, let me say from 1st grade to 12th grade, whatever I did turned out to be good without too much of failure. And hence that had this implication of, hey, is this all because of me, or is it obviously luck, or I think it's complete fluke kind of feeling. and not realizing or not feeling happy at the moment of that achievement as much as I do today. So I think I've overcome some of those challenges. As I said, as you go through life, you also have failure or what you perceive as failure, and then you learn from it and get a little more balanced and learn to enjoy the moment when you succeed.
Okay. So I think so the challenge is that you, despite achieving all of that, you probably did not enjoy that much or anchor yourself in that.
There's a good part to it, one of not getting too carried away by it. But the bad part is you don't enjoy that moment, of success. Like you wrote an entrance exam and you did very well in it, and you got into a great engineering college on a merit quota, or you went into a college from 10th to 11th and 12th, the college which you preferred pretty easily in the first list. You were among the top three in your class always in the first to 10th period. But somewhere I didn't enjoy the fact that I achieved that, because I always felt this was something which was not really based on what I did, but was a fluke or was entirely due to some external variables.
But would that, for example, so each success you'll rather enjoying the success, you'll say move on and go for the next one, or would that impact even how you would then lead in future, or how did you handle that? Because then, yeah.
No, I think, as I said, Ron, as I go along, there are times where you wanted and you put in your best effort as a team or as an individual leader, and you didn't achieve the result. So you then take ownership for it very strongly, because you realize that you put in the effort and it failed. So I think now what happens is enjoying success for that moment and truly letting your hair down and enjoying that close of a good quarter, and then focusing about what you need to do in the future is not on that day. On the day you really get the results, you enjoy the positives of it, and then bounce back the next day to start thinking about the future. So I think that's something which has changed, and that's helped.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be one or two events that would you say as life-shaping events of your personality? What made Radha Radha?
Yeah, one thing, as I said, the first 12 years of life was about academic success, about having a lot of good friends, having a good family upbringing, and focusing on the right values. But as you go along, when I got into the Indian Institute of Management, I very quickly realized that there was one setback, setback because I felt I'd done a great summer project with Hindustan Unilever, which of course later turned out to be one of my employers. And I was expecting a pre-placement offer. You know how the IIMs are.
Yes.
In the second year, after you finish your first year summers and you come back to campus, everybody talks about, hey, Radha's anyway out of this placement scene because he's going to get a pre-placement offer from Hindustan Unilever. Unfortunately, at the end of the second year, when the panel did come, there was some confusion because there's a change in the way Unilever started recruiting in India. They had a common panel across Hindustan Lever, Ponds, Brook Bond, and Lipton. I'd done my summer internship with Brook Bond, and somehow that information didn't travel back into this panel. So I didn't get that pre-placement offer. So disappointed. Actually, I was so disappointed. That was my sort of first setback in life, if I can say, because something which I really wanted or assumed I'd get didn't happen. And so the next 3 days, I didn't even join placements. I was sulking in my room till the professor of marketing, head of marketing, Professor Jha, called me and told me, hey, this is not the way to respond to you should reach back to them, or you should apply to other companies, find a job, and then when you go back to Bangalore, go reach the person, marketing head with whom you did your internship, and check as to what happened and why didn't you make it and what are the reasons for it. So then 2 years, I got a job in Aisha, thanks to that council on day 4. I joined campus interviews again. I got into Aisha, had a great career with them for 2 years, and then one morning called up. It took me 2 years to come out of that
Wow.
disappointment. Okay, it took me 2 full years.
Mm,
That hey, because there is a build up to that expectation, and then there was the drop. So after 2 years, I called up the marketing head and the HR head with whom I'd done that presentation. They said, "You didn't join us. What happened?"
huh.
So I said, "You guys didn't give me an offer." He said, "Don't tell me." Then, the next half an hour, they asked me to come over. They gave me an offer. I, of course, skipped the management training and joined them as an area manager direct, and did spend a good 8 years career with them. The lesson I take away from it is there are many things in life which you might very strongly desire, you might have worked very hard towards, but for some reasons it may not work out. And your ability to bounce back from it and bounce back quickly would help you in addressing the challenge head on, either to learn from the mistake which you did, or potentially in this case, bridge the communication gap which had happened. Later, I realized that there was a communication gap because of this. So 2 years earlier, I could have joined them too, and without feeling disappointed over 2 years working for a different company and having this feeling that you lost out on something which you deserve. Which is why I'm saying now when I get the success, I enjoy it. There is no two ways to it. I enjoy it with the team. I credit the team with it. Enjoy the moment and then focus on subsequent things on the subsequent day rather than on the same day.
Interesting. And anything else which would you call as a turning point of your life, which actually made a structural shift in your
See, Rohan, Rohan, after this incident and then building a career with Hindustan Unilever, was very focused. I was trying to get into this. Levers used to have an A list, listers, they used to call them. Just people who do well and are young leaders who are the future for the company. I wanted to get into that and do well in the foods business, get exposure internationally. I was very focused on that journey. I had an younger brother whom I spoke to you about, an unfortunate accident. And that is a turning point in my life too, because this was the year 1997.
Okay.
And this was my 4th or 5th year at Hindustan Lever. Things were going well. I had just moved into the ice creams business, which was supposed to be the new business line, which they acquired the quality walls, the Dollops parlors, Lobstop parlors, Yankee Doodle ice creams. They had launched the Feast and Cornetto. It was supposed to be a happening business for the future for Levers at that point. And I had moved from the beverages and tea business, which is more mature, to a growth business, which was ice creams. And our strategy was to put ice creams center of plate in the Indian palate. And I was very focused. I was in Hyderabad. I was running our area operations as area general manager for Andhra Pradesh region. We had franchises I used to work with. That's when I got a call at 2:30 a.m. one morning. My parents were with me. I had relocated them from Bangalore to Hyderabad. I was expecting my first child, my daughter, Akansha. She was born in 97 Feb. And this incident occurred in August 97. We got an early morning call at 2:30 a.m. My brother used to study in the Mysore University in PES College of Engineering, Mandya. Very treacherous road between Mandya and Bangalore and Mandya and Mysore. The road has now become 2-lane. They're further expanding it now as part of the 4-lane program of the government. But that time it used to be just 2 lanes, one against the other. 1 lane one way and the other lane the other way. On the last day of his 8th semester, unfortunately, Vishwanathan, my younger brother, he would today be he was 21 in 97. So he would be another 24, he would be 45, 46 now. On the last day of his 8th semester, he was headed to the Apple education classes Aptech
Yeah, Eptech.
classes. Unfortunately, he was late, and then he was walking back alone because his professor told him in the Aptech class that he would rather do the class for him the next day morning than that day. And as fate would have it, when he was walking back, a bunch of his friends, he was in electronics and communication. His batchmates were all there in the Aptech class, and his computer science batchmates were headed out to a nearby dhaba, and they told him, "Why don't you join us to have dinner with us? You're always with the electronic guys, and you don't come with us, and this is the opportunity of walking back alone." As fate would have it, they had a seat on one of the bikes. Normally, they are a batch of 8, and one of them was sick. So there was that one seat, and Vishwa climbed onto that seat. And when they were headed to the dhaba, he had an accident where he slipped, he hit his head on a stone culvert, went into coma. We got this call at 2:30 morning saying that your brother had an accident and he is in coma. And our world, handsome chap, 6'2", full of energy and life. Our world crumbled because we always thought of a future with my elder sister, myself, and him. Things were going well. I had got my first child. My parents were very happy. My brother was completing his education that year. So, it's like a constellation of good things. And my sister was having a second child as well. And then we lost him after a 24-hour battle where we all flew down to Bangalore and drove down to Mysore. We lost him because my mother was again very stoic about it, because she was very clear that God has given her the child. And if she wanted him back, she wanted him fully, without any, all of 21 years full of energy and life, rather than seeing somebody who was with a very poor brain score. She was quite clear that God should take him back completely or give him back holistically to her, which was quite a command coming from her. And, I realized through this incident that much as we shape things, much as we want results, and there should be a drive to achieve something and have a goal, getting that sense of balance around you is very important. Getting imbalanced over something is not worth it, because life itself is about, enjoying the good things. The sheer fact that you have life today is about having the opportunity to make a difference tomorrow. And enjoying that is a good thing, even as you have aspirations and ambitions to do a lot more. So I think that is a turning point, and I have definitely changed as a leader. I used to be a lot more head focused in terms of I can drive my own destiny very strongly. So now accepting that, look, destiny you can drive through hard work and effort, but accepting the outcomes is a mix of a lot of other variables too.
So, what would you say as, I think we covered the setback, failure, rejection, and what would you say one of the most difficult conflict you faced? Any story about that, how you tackled it?
We've spoken about this
in one of the
in one of your discussions, even in your book, I think, about conflict and how to resolve conflict. Conflicts come in various ways. Wherever there is two opposing points of view, and you are, a CEO, many times there are functional conflicts between, let's say, HR who wants to do certain things, people-centered, finance which tries to get the balance and do the right thing for the shareholder, and then the client, obviously, and your head of sales is consciously pushing you towards doing right for the client and giving value. And balancing this conflict in every decision you do and getting that balance, as I said, there's always, sometimes you do a trade-off more towards people temporarily, and then find the balance. the idea of resolving these conflicts, making people see each other's point of view, appreciating where they're coming from without breaking down trust. See, one of the key things I have realized while solving conflict is about trust. You can have the most difficult conversations as long as you have trust. Yeah, when others attribute a motive to you, then it means that there is a breakdown in trust and there is clearly a dysfunctional conflict. Making a conflict functional to find a result which is a better balance between these three stakeholders, which has traditionally been the shareholder, the employee, and the client, and of course society. How do you contribute back to society? Are you creating enough employment? Are you creating a secondary impact? Are we contributing enough towards the right causes? Also creates conflict sometimes, because if COVID is a great example of conflict. I'll explain this in a minute. April last year, we had to balance out between ensuring no disruption to client operations, because we do critical work for clients, and at the same time ensuring that our employees were healthy and we were not exposing them to risks. So which means we had to dismantle the dedicated offshore development center or offshore operation center, dedicated operation center model, and then distribute the workforce to work from home without compromising data security and privacy. And then doing this very quickly, given the government lockdowns, so that you didn't put your employees to risk. How do you manage that conflict? It's about communication. It's about sharing perspectives. It's about sharing information which makes each side see the truth of the other side and where the other side is coming from, and then finding the middle ground. So I think we've done that well. It's made me a more empathetic leader through that process, because it's taken a whole army of 42,000 associates across the globe to go that extra mile to deliver to their clients. And the client accolades which came in after that has also been tremendous. So I think it's but going through it, finding that balance, because the let's say an operations leader wanted to move to work from home immediately, the client was not in a position to approve it. And how do you then together find that solution whereby both of them don't feel they lost, and they created a win-win, both for the organization, for the employee, as well as the client.
So, okay, let's talk about decision making. So what has been any story on the biggest dilemma you ever faced, one of the most difficult decision of your life?
This is a dilemma in terms of, dilemmas come in many shapes and forms. Okay, let me give it a thought for a minute here, and then pick up the threads. As I said, I joined Infosys in 2000. I'd done my journey through consulting, and at the end of 2 or 3 years of moving away from a CPG supply chain based company to Infosys, I'd done that decision consciously, because I felt the future would be about shaping clients through technology and bringing the business domain knowledge of, I'd worked in rural markets in India, I'd worked in urban markets, again in the ice cream business, putting up supply chains, creating them. And Infosys offered me this global opportunity to work with global clients. And that was something which was very lucrative. The technology and business coming together was again very lucrative. So when I said lucrative, it was not lucrative in terms of compensation, because Infosys compensation was much lower than Levers in 2000. So I had to take a salary reduction before I joined Infosys. Of course, 20 years hindsight, no regrets at all. It's been a good decision. But as I went through that journey of 2-3 years in consulting, I felt I was not in a line function. I was not in a function where I could smell the coffee, taste the coffee.
I know what it means.
Yeah, in Levers, when you're doing marketing and sales, you're in the thick of action. And here I was in a consulting role, and I was leading our retail and consumer packaged goods consulting. There's a strong temptation to go back to the CPG industry. Very strong temptation in 2003, because we were still very IT focused company. We were not still creating business solutions, which is bringing business and IT together the way I had envisaged when I joined Infosys in 2000. And I was clearly looking at, is it worthwhile to go back to the CPG industry? There was an offer which came my way as well. I won't name the company for confidentiality reasons, but I just felt maybe I should go back to be valued in a line role. That was around the time when, the 9/11 had happened, the dot-com burst happened in around 2003, 2001, and then it took a year to impact the way business was. That's when we could no longer sell skills, and we had to sell solutions. And that's when Infosys verticalized. And the first vertical we created was in retail and consumer packaged goods. If that decision was done later, maybe a year later, maybe I would tell a different story in a different company. So that dilemma, I had to evaluate whether to go back to my thing which I knew very well, and where I felt I was valued for what I brought because that knowledge was respected, to here integrating that knowledge with the new knowledge of technology, and then learning technology, appreciating it, and then bringing the business domain to integrate it to create a solution for the customer. That really started happening from 2003. So 2002, 2003 was a period of dilemma of whether to go back to CPG or to continue in the retail industry. One other personal dilemma has been whether to continue in the US and build a career there after spending 4 or 5 years in the US, or to come back and deliver value for those clients, but do it based in India. And again, that dilemma I went through. My parents were getting old, and I felt it's important for my children to also experience their roots with their grandparents alive. And that, again, looking back, was a very good decision. Now, looking back at my continuance in Infosys too, I don't think I would have got a shot at being the CEO of a large global corporation if I had continued in my CPG journey. I can't say that 17 years ago anything could have happened, but the fact that I continued and persevered through this has helped me clearly benefit from it, both from a professional career standpoint as well as from being very satisfied that I learned something new and I'm able to bring the best of my supply chain and retail consumer packaged goods knowledge and combine that with appreciation of technology to create greater value for our customers.
So one question I was wondering is in various times of turbulence, what has kept you anchored? What kind of narrative goes in your head as you face turbulent times?
The first voice which is there in my head is, I think perseverance against all odds. I remember my maternal grandfather. If he could work in different homes for each week and educate himself through 2 degrees, I think we have a lot to be grateful and blessed for. He's put the next generation at a higher level, and obviously my parents have put me at a better level than where they were. My dad was, we were middle class, lower middle class, to now definitely being middle class, upper middle class. So we moved that, that spectrum. And one is that this too can be overcome. It is not the end of the world. You need to put in your effort. You need to draft in as much support by transparently talking about whom else, accept and acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, find the answers together and persevere against odds. That's something which a bell keeps telling me. It's not the end of the world. It's not as bad as it looks. This too shall pass.
No, I think these are very important narratives. And if if you can set them as default narratives, I think you can handle any turbulence in that sense. Very,
Yeah,
very.
when you, as a CEO of a global company, there are many things which don't necessarily go the way you want them to go. And there are situations which create turbulence, either because we didn't match up to an employee expectation or a client expectation. And then how do you bridge it and how do you ensure you acknowledge it? The first step is to acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge that there is a challenge or an issue, you are then not solving for it. So the first step is to honestly acknowledge it and then tell yourself that you may not have all the answers, but you should persevere against the odds because there will be light at the end of the tunnel.
Very interesting. So one or two other personal questions. Do you have any unusual or an absurd activity or hobby that you love?
Well, I still pride myself as India's Anil Kumble, who never got to the cricket field. Loss for cricket, I don't know whether it's a gain for corporate, but let me just say that a loss for cricket for sure. I like to do a lot of bowling. So when I get a chance in the community, I see the cricket, my son and his friends playing. I invariably, they normally see uncles. I don't like the word uncle, but I have to accept it. Gracefully, I've aged. So uncles come and like to bat. But I'm one of those uncles who likes to come and bowl.
Okay.
Because I enjoy my spin bowling with tennis ball, and I try it. So every time I go and join them, they have no problems because they know that I won't put my hand up to bat. Many uncles come and play batting and then walk away, whereas I'm happy to come and keep bowling. So that's one thing I enjoy. Weekends, I definitely try my arm bowling for sure with tennis ball. My brand of leg spin and googlies. And then the other thing I do, thanks to my travel, which is now reduced because of COVID or completely stopped because of COVID over the last 9 months, is collecting stickers, magnetic stickers, fridge magnets, as you call it. So my old refrigerator is full of country magnets of different countries. Literally, I've run out of the front door space. I've now started using the side panels. Thanks to the countries I've visited. So every country or city, even within India I visit, I try and search for a fridge magnet, which I then come back and put it out there as though I won a trophy visiting that city. But it just keeps me, when I look at it, it helps me reflect on.
I think it codes with the memory of that journey.
That's right. That's right.
Any other ritual that you follow over the years which has helped you?
Well, one ritual I definitely do is at the end of each day, I spend some time reflecting about the day, the good, the bad, the ugly, which happened during that day. It's not like I write it down or anything, but I do, before I sleep, I spend 10-15 minutes just recapping the day in my head. Sometimes I do it the next morning when I'm doing my walk. I like to do my walks alone. I don't do it with anyone else. So it gives me a lot of me time to think. With COVID, my walk times have gone up to at least an hour a day. And so that I just think through the prior day. What could I have done? This meeting, I did this town hall with employees. What went well? What would I like to change? If something in me tells me, my gut tells me after a conversation, whether I was my best self in that conversation or was I not my normal self or not my authentic self. And then I make a note of it. Okay, this is what triggered me. Maybe I should have spoken about this early. So that way it was out of my system rather than it affecting the conversation. So these kinds of reflections I do after client meetings, after employee meetings, after just peer group meetings with my peers. So I do a 10 to 12 minute reflection. It comes very naturally. It's not a very put on or deliberate activity, I just think through the prior day and what could have been better or what I could have done better.
I think this is very important to then bring out all the insights as well as complete the previous day. Otherwise, it keeps going on. Very useful.
And Rohan, sometimes I also end up mixing things. I want to be honest. You have not a very happy interaction. Let's say a meeting didn't go well. Now I do my best to not carry it forward into the next unrelated interaction at home. But sometimes it does. I'm in the midst of let's say a board game, just to give you an example. And the mood is, happy. There is happiness all around. I get an escalation call on something.
Yeah.
I go back, do the call. I come back, but my wife immediately senses that call was a bad one. She'll tell me something's not right. So get it out of your system. You're not like your usual self. You're very distant. You're still thinking that call. You're not thinking this game. We want you present here.
Yes.
So that's again something which I think is human. But for me, again, I keep trying to improve on it so that I find completeness in a transaction at the end of that transaction. This reflection, I'm even sometimes saying, should I take a 5-minute break, reflect on it, note down a couple of things I could have done better in a bad interaction, and then move on to the next one. That way, I find completeness in the prior interaction rather than carrying it forward to the next one.
This can be a very, very useful practice. Creating completion. I think in the current world of jumping from one meeting to another and one day to another without realizing what happened.
So true.
Yeah, I'm going to take that from this session as well. So what are you now looking forward in life?
Yeah, so Rohan, a lot of things drive me. I clearly am passionate about my people at work and what I can do for them or we can together do. Let me put it that way. A larger sense of purpose of leaving behind a good legacy, something where I can groom the next level of leaders, make them successful, ensure there is a good succession planning. I completed 5 years as a CEO. We've turned around this business from where it was to be one of the industry leading businesses for us and service lines for us. Over the last 2 years, both in terms of profitable growth as well as client value, as well as employee value proposition, we've done well. I clearly think helping groom the next line of leaders, and the average age in our company is 26. So I have a lot of young leaders to work with, bring out more cultural integration because we are a global company. A lot of our workforce, both gender and cultural diversity, inclusion. We have 150 differently abled people in the company.
Wow.
Each of them brings so much positive energy to work that it is humongous learning and motivation to just be with them and listen to them and how they overcome odds, whether odds of a physical disability and how are they overcoming that to come to work and contribute in a hugely positive way. So I think I have at least another half a decade or more of work to do till I call it quits in that sense. But that's one area. At the family front, of course, I have 2 children. One of them is pursuing her passion as a veterinarian in the Royal Vet College in Edinburgh.
Okay.
And that's my daughter. And my son is on the cusp of his college admission, either in the UK or the US. He wants to pursue business management. So once I get him set up there, then I think on the family front, we would have had both of them, well set to be good citizens, good global citizens. And then on the personal front, I want to learn golfing.
Okay.
I've started it, but it's not. I'm not spending enough cycles on it. I'm giving up too early, I feel. So that's on the personal front. I, at some stage, also over the next few years, try and find some time for pursuing a PhD
Oh,
in
okay.
in sustainable marketing with either the Indian Institute of Science or the Indian Institute of Management.
Mhm.
My wife finds it to be a crazy idea. She believes I can't do it. But as I told you, I want to persevere against the odds. You know, it's not. I'm not going to give up that easy on it. I think it just helps me to channelize my mental energy towards something which can benefit India as a country. How do you bring the best of rural and social and sustainable marketing together? I have written out what I think I want to do, but still some distance away in
Mm,
finding the right guide and mentor for it.
yeah. Okay. So, what is the final question? Is any advice would you like to give to a smart driven leader?
Smart driven leader, I'll just say two things. One is serve with empathy. Definitely bring the service mindset or servant leadership mindset. Think much more than yourself. It's not about your journey.
Mm,
It's about the people in the journey whom you're impacting.
mm,
And especially in senior leader roles, you will impact a lot of people. So serving with purpose rather than serving for yourself is something. Serve with empathy. So empathy brings the others into the equation very strongly.
mm,
That's one. And two, whatever you achieve, at the end of the day, acknowledge your vulnerability, because the world can construe many things in a way which make you look extremely good.
mm.
And if you sort of accept that as all you're doing, then it'd be very hard to learn. So be humble, acknowledge vulnerability, uh, relish your moment of happiness, but also acknowledge that there are things in it which you didn't necessarily, you're not the best at it. Somebody else helped you with it. Acknowledge those people, acknowledge your vulnerability. That way, people find it a joy to work with you
Mm.
rather than you take all credit to yourself. So learn to apportion that credit to a bunch of people who are working for you or with you.
I think very, very useful advice, suggestions, and stories. And I'm sure whatever you shared would be extremely useful for all the audience on this channel. And thank you very much for your time on this.
Yeah, Ron, real pleasure to talk to you. I hope I shared some of the stories of my journey over the last few years. As I said, it's been a good journey. There's still a few more years to go to keep contributing and then building a legacy, leaving behind a good legacy. I like to teach, so that PhD could also help me teach
Mm.
and learn and share what I have learned. So I think thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts. It also brings me a little more clarity. And tomorrow morning, when I reflect on this conversation, I would know what I could have done better, or what I can take from this
Mm.
forward. So thank you so much.